Hey everyone, welcome back. And today, with this month, we are doing an educational video on Japanese beetles, as you can see here. So, Japanese beetles, right now in the United States, they are going to be coming out of the ground and are going to be munching on plants right now. So I felt this would be a good time to go ahead and talk about them a little bit. But first, the scientific classification for them. So they are from the domain Eukaryota, kingdom Animalia, phylum Arthropoda, class Insecta, order Coleoptera, and then suborder Polyphaga. Infraorder Scarabaeiformia, family Scarabaeidae, genus Papillia, species Papillia japonica. And then I have a picture here behind me of a Japanese beetle right there. Look really pretty, even though they're a little bit destructive. So first, our distribution here. So these Japanese beetles are, of course, native to Japan, but they are invasive species in the North America and Europe. They were first written evidence of the insect appearing within the United States was in 1916 in a nursery near Remington, New Jersey. And it's thought to have entered the United States in a shipment of iris bulbs prior to 1912 when the inspections of commodities entering the country began. The first Japanese beetle found in Canada was brought by tourists to Nova Scotia by ferry from Maine in 1939. And then in 2014, the first population in mainland Europe was discovered near Milan, Italy. So, the anatomy of these beetles. So, they're about 15 millimeters long, or 0.16 inches in length, and 10 millimeters, or 0.4 inches in width. They're iridescent copper-colored elytra and green thorax and head. So, I really do like the color scheme of these Japanese beetles. The green and brown are really nice, green and copper. Uh, and then the grubs are white and they lie in a curled position. So I have a picture here of a grub right here. And then a mature grub is roughly 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters long. So we have a grub here, as you can see. So the grub has some spiracles, these little holes in its side that are used to breathe. And then it has a thorax right here, and then it has its true legs there. It has, I guess, 3 sets of them, so 6 legs in all. Has a head, has some antennae, and then has a raster here at the very end of it. Then I do have a picture here of a Japanese beetle right next to a penny. So it is just a little bit shorter than a penny for a size. And then if we move myself here over, we can look at an adult Japanese beetle. So it has fronds, the antennae, has some forelegs, it has mid legs, elytra, abdomen, hind legs, all that there labeled for you. And they are actually somewhat good flyers when they don't hit stuff. Okay, so the life cycle of these Japanese beetles takes about 1 full year. However, in the extreme northern parts of its range, as well as the high altitude zones found in its native Japan, its development may take up to 2 years. So if we start right here in July, I guess, a female will leave the plants and it will burrow about 3 inches into the ground to lay a few eggs at a time, and one female can lay a total of 40 to 60 eggs. The eggs will then hatch in the midsummer and the grubs will begin to feed. And then in late autumn, the grubs burrow 4 to 8 inches into the soil and will spend 10 months of the year in the ground. They are about an inch long when fully grown. Then, in the early spring, the grubs will return to the turf or the grass, and they'll feed on the roots until late spring. Then they'll change into the pupae, and after 2 weeks, the pupae become beetles and emerge from the ground. So, anyways, you can see right here, the female goes into the ground, lays some eggs, the larvae hatch from the eggs and grow, 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 and then they finally get to the pupae stage right here, and then they climb out around June. Then in July, they are munching on leaves, so you can see here. So the eggs are just these little white dots here. Eggs are laid individually or sometimes in small clusters near the soil surface. And then within approximately 2 weeks, they will hatch. Larvae then. So the larvae feed on the fine roots or other organic material. Again, there's a picture of them one above. And then as the larvae matures, they become C-shaped grubs, and they'll consume progressively coarser roots. The larvae will hibernate in a small cell in the soil, emerging in the spring when the soil temperatures rise again. Then, within 4 to 6 weeks of breaking hibernation, the larvae will pupate, and most of the beetle's life is spent as a larvae, with only 30 to 45 days spent as an adult, which then they are trying to reproduce. So, the adult beetle. Again, I have a picture up here of it. So, an adult beetle will feed on leaf material above ground, and it will use pheromones to attract other beetles, which will then overwhelm plants and end up with skeletonized leaves from the top of the plant downwards. I will have some picture of the leaves being skeletonized. What you need to know now is that adult beetles will use pheromones to attract each other, and then one plant can become overwhelmed. So the aggregation of beetles will alternate daily between mating, feeding, and ovipositing. And an adult female may lay as many as 40 to 60 eggs in her lifetime. So, what are some of the host plants of the Japanese beetle? So, the larvae of the Japanese beetle feed on roots of many types of grasses, whereas the adults will consume the leaves of much wider range of hosts. These can be like beans, cannabis, strawberries, tomatoes, peppers, grapes, etc., etc. I have a list there, but it's roughly 300 species of plants. So basically, imagine a plant that you like if it has fruits or it's a vegetable or something like that, and Japanese beetles will probably eat it. So they are a major nuisance to agriculture. And not only do they eat the leaves, but they'll sometimes eat the flowers or the fruits of the plants. So I have pictures here. So first picture over here is a picture of a rose. So they're eating the rose petals, the flower of the rose. Then here it's eating a fruit here. That might be a peach. I can't really tell. Then if you have right behind me, you can see the skeletonized leaf here. So this leaf is not quite 100% skeletonized, but it is getting there. Give it a day or two and it'll probably be skeletonized completely. So they are a major, major pain. So there are traps that use floral scents, pheromones, or possibly both of these to attract the Japanese beetle to a trap. There is the milky spore disease, floating row covers, manually collection, and then biocontrol. So we will go over each of these a little bit more in detail, but here is a picture of the milky spore here. It's something you will spread on your lawn to kill the grubs of the Japanese beetle. So let's first look at traps. So traps have been invented specifically to target Japanese beetles. And you can see here are 3 different types of ones that I've found. All of them use the same exact type, except they use different things to hold the beetles after they're caught. Like this one over here is using a trash can. This one's just using a little cloth bag. And this one is using some very, very long container. I can't tell what it is. But anyways, they're usually comprised of a pair of cross walls, like this yellow bit here, with a bag or plastic container underneath, and are baited with the floral scent, pheromone, or sometimes both. However, studies conducted suggest beetles attracted to the traps will frequently not end up in the traps. Instead, they land on plants in the vicinity and cause more damage along the flight path and near the trap than may have occurred if the trap were not present. So basically what that means is that, yes, the trap will attract beetles, but it will not catch all the beetles. Quite a few of them will end up on plants that are around the trap. So the traps could be more detrimental. They could cause more problems than they actually do. Because what if you don't have a ton of Japanese beetles in your yard? You just have a few. Then you put up one of these traps. It will attract all the Japanese beetles around there to your yard. And then, of course, they'll mate, lay eggs, and then you have a ton more Japanese beetles the next year. So traps might not be a 100% good option for getting rid of Japanese beetles. So the next one we have is the milky spore disease. So it's caused by a bacterium called milky spore. It is a biological control where you spread the spores on your lawn, and then the grubs eat it, and then they die. So it is commercially available in a powdered form for application in your lawn areas, and it takes from 2 to 4 years to establish maximal protection. So the first year you put it down, you might not notice as much of a difference, but as the years go on, as you keep doing it, it will build up and hopefully it'll kill most of the Japanese beetle grubs. Ingestion of the spore by the host will activate the reproduction of the bacteria inside the grub, and then within 7 to 21 days, the grub will eventually die. And as the grub decomposes, billions of new spores are released into the soil. So just by getting one grub, then billions of more will be reproduced and spread out. Milky spore in the soil is not harmful to beneficial insects, birds, bees, pets, or people. And the milky spore, like other bacteria, is highly survivable in drought conditions, but they suffer in temperatures of zone 5 and colder. So if you are in an area that is super, super cold, milky spore might not be a good option for you. But if your area is a little bit warmer, then this sounds like a good option. Especially since it's not harmful to really anything else that I've seen, at least. So, there is another option here. We have row covers. So, it is basically just putting plastic over all your plants. As you can see here, we have strawberry plants that have it over it, and then over here, I can't tell what these are because they're completely covered, and they're also behind me. But basically, it's just any transparent or semi-transparent flexible material. Could be fabric, could be plastic sheeting, and it's used as a protective covering for plants. And then also it's used to exclude the beetles. So it protects the plant from a lot of different things, and it also keeps the beetles out. But there is one big problem with this. Because they're all covered up and it keeps out any bugs, bugs are, especially bees, are big pollinators, and this may necessitate hand pollination of the flowers. So you might help all your plants survive, but then you might not get them all pollinated and they might not produce fruit. So another option we have is manual collection. So it's as easy as that. When you see beetles around your yard, you just manually pick them off your plants and you get rid of them. One way that people have done this is they'll use a container of soap water and literally just soapy water. The soap in the water reduces the surface tension, causing the beetles to sink and then be unable to escape the water, and then they eventually drowned. So this is a very easy way to do it if there aren't very many beetles. If there's way too many, you're going to be doing this a long, long time. So possibly milky spore, do that, and then whatever ones, I guess, survive, you can then pick up with the soapy water cup. Okay, then we have another biological control. This one, I cannot find how to pronounce it, so I'm going to try my best. Istocheta aldrich. Hopefully that's somewhat similar. So they are a little fly here, as you can see the picture above. It is originally from Japan, and it has been introduced to North America in 1922 as a biocontrol to combat the Japanese beetles. So it will seek out adult female beetles and then lay eggs on their thoraxes, allowing its larvae to burrow into the insect's body and kill it. A female of the species can lay up to 100 eggs over 2 weeks, and the rapidity with which its larvae kills their host allows the use of these flies to suppress beetle populations before they themselves can reproduce. So this basically kills the beetles before they even reproduce. So there's no eggs, no grubs, no nothing like that. So if we could get quite a few of these flies around an area, you could get rid of Japanese beetles pretty quick, it sounds like. Next, we have Typhia vernalis here. It is a solitary wasp that was imported from Korea in 1920s and early 1930s to control Japanese beetle populations. So it is a parasite of the Japanese beetle larvae and reproduces by locating beetle grubs through digging, and then on finding one, it will paralyze it with a sting, lay an egg on it, and on hatching, the wasp larvae will then consume the grub. So another fairly good way to get rid of Japanese beetles. There are also some entomopathogenic nematodes, which are soil-dwelling nematodes that are known to seek out and prey on Japanese beetle grubs during the subterranean portion of their life cycle. then by entering the larvae, and it will reproduce within their bodies, which will cause the host mortality within 24 to 48 hours. So you can see a picture here of what it looks like. The nematodes will get inside the body and basically will reproduce enough that it kind of like bursts out of the host larvae. Varieties that have been seen in commercial use as pest control agents include both of those different types there. Also, geraniums here have been shown to cause a bit of a problem for Japanese beetles when they eat them. So, within 30 minutes of consuming geranium petals, the beetle will roll over on its back, its legs and antennae will slowly twitch, and it remains paralyzed for several hours. Then, the beetles typically recover within 24 hours. But they often will succumb to death after predators spot and then devour the beetles while they are helpless. So, I guess geraniums aren't actually hurting the beetles, except they're making them more able to be eaten by predators. So, I guess if you had a lot of predators around that just couldn't get the beetles, if you had geraniums out, then it could cause it so the beetles will be paralyzed and easier to eat. So, another option. So, Japanese beetles can also be used as animal food. So, Japanese beetles are rich in proteins, fats, and essential amino acids, and they provide a balanced and digestible food supplement. So, they contain up to 60% protein on dry weight basis, and they're comparable to or better than conventional feeds like soybean meal or fish meal. By using Japanese beetle traps for poultry feed, farmers can offer their birds a natural, high-protein diet. And then the fresh beetles can be offered directly or can be frozen, dried, or even ground into meal. And then drying preserves the beetle's nutritional content and allows for storage, ensuring a year-round supply. So people can use these traps or whatever to collect up all the Japanese beetles where they can then freeze them or dry them or feed them fresh. I've even seen people that have attached a trap and then it goes directly into a water trough where the beetles will get stuck on the water and then their, let's say, chickens or whatever will then eat the beetles off the water top. So, pretty cool. And something also I want to mention is that Japanese beetles do have a little bit of a defense mechanism. So, well, if you call it a defense mechanism, because I mean, it's not really defensive, it's just something they do. But whenever Japanese beetles, like whenever you, let's say, shake the leaf they're on or something like that, they just fall straight down. They don't do anything else. They just fall straight down, and hopefully when they're on the ground, like let's say in the grass or whatever, they're harder to spot, I guess. So yeah. Then also, when Japanese beetles fly, if they do end up in anything like on clothing or possibly in your hair, they are hard to get out because their little arms can just attach to your hair pretty easily. So, a little bit hard. That is all I had for Japanese beetles. A little shorter video this time, but considering all my other videos recently have been like 30, 40 minutes plus, a smaller one is not terrible to have. I wanted to put this out here, especially now, since around my house, Japanese beetles have just started to become a little bit of a nuisance. There aren't a ton of them around, but there's enough that I'm noticing them, and I'm having to go outside and get rid of them. So these little, like, this video, I guess, this educational video, was a little bit of me trying to figure out the best way to kind of get rid of Japanese beetles, which I'll have to look up more about the milky spore disease, the milky spores, because I need to make sure 100% sure, but I'm pretty dang sure because everywhere I've checked, it has not said anything about them being harmful to beneficial stuff. So like insects, birds, bees, pets, or other stuff like that. I might have to look into getting some of this because something I kind of thought of myself was that like, oh, what if like one area of your lawn or whatever, you put down the traps away from all your other stuff, and then that area, there'll be a ton of Japanese beetles. Then you could use the milky spores. You could possibly plant geraniums around. You could even have like I don't know, chickens or birds or whatever, you could have a bird feeder there that make the birds come there, and then they could possibly eat the Japanese beetles. So I feel like a lot of these different things can be used together to have a big impact. So like the area that you have the traps, there's probably going to be a lot more Japanese beetles lay their eggs there. So then you spread around the milky spores there to kill all the grubs. Then also geraniums or whatever, plant those around there, have a bird feeder around, which will lead birds to come there to eat, and they might eat some Japanese beetles. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff here you can use together. Um, yeah, and manual collection. That's basically what I'm doing right now is just manual collection. But yeah. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed that little educational video there. If you are having trouble with Japanese beetles or whatever, hopefully this helped you out a little bit. Maybe this gives you some ideas of what to do. And also, just be very careful about using the traps and stuff like that, because if you don't have a very bad Japanese beetle problem and you use a trap, you might have a much bigger problem later. So that's just a little something to keep in mind before you use it. So anyways, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next month with the next educational video. So, bye-bye.